The air hums with the sound of turbines spinning in the dark. Sparks flicker off steel as wrenches turn beneath floodlights that never sleep. A figure moves quietly through the haze, hands steady, eyes tired, uniform faded. Her name, Elena Ward. To most, she's invisible, one of dozens of mechanics who keep the sky alive. Grease-stained hands, clipped hair, no insignia worth saluting. She fixes what others break, and then steps aside so someone else can take the glory. But every night, when the engines stop and the hangar goes quiet, she stands beneath the wings and looks up, as if waiting for the stars to give her permission. Because deep down, she knows the truth. She was never meant to stay on the ground. This is Hero Without a Name, where silence tells stories words cannot. And tonight, we remember the woman they called just a mechanic, until the day she flew the plane herself. The desert base was alive long before dawn. Engines coughed, steel groaned, men shouted across the runway, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Elena moved like a ghost. Her rhythm was mechanical, precise, unbroken. Torque, tighten, test. Move on. No one noticed her much. Not the pilots who swaggered past in mirrored visors, not the officers pacing with clipboards. She existed between the echoes, efficient, quiet, invisible. She joined the service young, driven by a dream that never fit inside her file. Once she'd trained to fly, hours logged in simulators, lessons learned from borrowed manuals and stolen moments. But a budget cut, a change in policy, and one unfit label later, she was grounded. Mechanical aptitude excellent, her record said. Pilot potential, not recommended. That's how the sky closes its doors, with paperwork. But paper couldn't burn the fire out of her. Every bolt she tightened, every cockpit she cleaned, every hum of the turbine, it all whispered the same thing. You belong up here. At night, she'd sit on the edge of the tarmac, headphones on, listening to the distant chatter of pilots on patrol. Their voices were steady, confident, alive. She'd close her eyes and imagine her own voice there, calm, measured, answering back. She knew the layout of every aircraft by heart. Every panel, every flaw, every sound. To her, they weren't machines. They were living things, breathing through hydraulics and heat. And she was the only one who ever truly listened. Still, the world only saw a uniform that said, maintenance crew. And in a place where rank defined worth, silence was her camouflage. But the thing about silence is, it holds its breath before the storm. The siren came without warning. Short, sharp, merciless. It ripped through the base like a blade through cloth. Pilots scrambled. The control tower barked orders. Sand whipped across the runway as engines roared to life. Enemy aircraft had crossed the border, fast, low, and armed. Within seconds, the hangar became chaos. Mechanics ran for cover, alarms blared red against the steel, and Elena stood frozen between shadows and light, the wrench still in her hand. She looked up, one jet still grounded. The commander's. Its hydraulic line was ruptured from shrapnel. The pilot, Captain Hayes, was injured, blood running down his temple as medics pulled him away. Without that jet, the defensive line was broken. "Elena," a voice shouted. "Get back. That's an order." But orders were just words, and words didn't stop explosions. She dropped to her knees and started working. Her hands moved faster than her thoughts. Clamp, seal, secure. Metal groaned beneath her touch, heat rising from the fuselage like breath from a wounded animal. Another blast shook the ground. The tower took a hit. Debris rained across the runway. The radio screamed with static and panic. And through it all, Elena's focus sharpened to a single, impossible point. The plane was fixed, barely. But the pilot was gone. She looked toward the sky, 3 enemy jets diving fast. No time. No one left. Her pulse pounded so loud it drowned the sirens. She wiped the sweat and oil from her face, took one trembling breath, and climbed into the cockpit. The seat felt like it was waiting for her. Every switch, every gauge, every vibration under her boots, familiar, intimate, like the heartbeat of something she'd known all her life. She strapped in, fingers moving on instinct. The canopy sealed with a hiss. Her reflection stared back, a mechanic wearing a pilot's ghost. Through the comms came frantic voices. "Who's in that jet? Ward, get out of there. That's a direct order." But it was too late. Engines roared. The plane shook. And then she released the brakes. The jet shot forward, screaming across the runway in a storm of dust and fire. For one breathless second, everything stopped. The ground, the noise, the fear, and then the world fell away beneath her. Up there, the chaos turned quiet. The desert stretched endless below. Smoke curled from the horizon. The sky, wide, merciless, and infinite, opened around her. She wasn't supposed to be here. But she was. Enemy jets appeared ahead, 3 black silhouettes cutting across the sun. She tightened her grip on the controls, the G-forces pressing against her chest. Her voice crackled through the radio, calm but trembling. "This is Ward. I'm engaging." No one answered. So she did. She climbed higher, the altimeter spinning. A locked tone screamed in her headset, "Missile incoming." She rolled the jet hard right, flares bursting from the belly in bright orange trails. The missile streaked past, detonating behind her in a blossom of fire. "Come on," she whispered, coaxing the wounded plane like an old friend. "Just a little longer." She dove low, chasing the enemy formation, weaving through smoke and shrapnel. One enemy broke off, coming straight for her. Elena's world narrowed to the crosshair in front of her. She lined it up, steady breath, press. The missile tore through the sky and met its mark. A fireball bloomed over the horizon. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop. 2 more targets. Fuel low. Damage alerts flashing red. The plane shook violently, warning alarms screaming in her ears. She could have turned back. She could have ejected. But she didn't. She pushed the throttle forward, one last chase. The second enemy dove beneath her, trying to lose lock. She followed, wind howling through cracked panels, systems failing one by one. Another hit struck her wing. The jet shuddered, coughing smoke and flame. She fought to keep it steady. "If I go down," she said softly, "I go down fighting." Static answered her. Then silence. She rolled the jet over, locked onto the final target, and fired. Both planes vanished into a horizon of fire. Then nothing. For a moment, there was only the sound of wind and the steady, fading hum of an engine that refused to die. She leveled out, smoke trailing behind her like a torn flag, and pointed the nose toward the desert floor. No one saw her land. Hours later, when the sky turned red with evening, the search teams found the wreckage. Not enemy. Hers. The jet lay broken but intact, nose buried in sand miles from the base. The cockpit canopy was shattered, sun glinting off fragments like glass stars. Inside, Elena Ward sat motionless, helmet off, her face streaked with dirt and oil. She wasn't unconscious. She was listening, to the wind, the silence, the heartbeat of the world finally catching up. When the commander arrived, the soldiers stepped back. Even the desert seemed to hold its breath. He looked at her, disbelief in his voice. "You disobeyed every rule we have." She looked up, eyes calm, almost tired. "Then maybe it's time you rewrite them." He didn't answer. Because how do you reprimand someone who saved your life? They brought her back to the base in silence. No cheers, no medals, no salutes. Just a long walk past the same hangars where she'd once been invisible. But the eyes that turned toward her now, they weren't blind anymore. Mechanics stopped working. Pilots lowered their helmets. The commander watched her pass, words caught behind pride and guilt. No one called her just a mechanic again. That night, she stood alone by the runway, the stars bright and cold above her. The desert wind brushed her hair, carrying the faint smell of fuel and fire. She closed her eyes and smiled. The sky, at last, knew her name. They say courage is loud, all explosions and glory. But sometimes, it's quiet. Sometimes, it's a woman tightening a bolt in the dark, fixing what's broken, waiting for a chance she knows may never come. And sometimes, that chance comes wrapped in smoke and sirens. Elena Ward never asked for fame. She didn't fly for medals. She flew because someone had to, and because, deep down, she always could. History will forget the paperwork that grounded her. But the sky will remember the day it finally made room for her wings. They called her just a mechanic. But the clouds called her pilot. This is Hero Without a Name. Where courage hides in grease-stained hands and quiet hearts. Where the stories that go untold finally take flight. Because some heroes aren't written in textbooks. They're the ones who fix the broken, until the day they have to fly it themselves. Some heroes are born in battle. Others are built in silence.